Mhm. All right. Well, thank you for tonight and for being here being with us this evening. It's a pleasure to have you. My name is Lynette Reed. I am the Vice President of Planning, Engagement, and Arts and Culture with the Atlanta Beltline. So again, welcome to the first quarterly briefing of 2025. And so if you're joining us for the first time, you may be wondering, what is the Atlanta Beltline Inc.? You may have experienced portions of it, but not fully understand the totality of it. And so Atlanta Beltline Inc. is the organization responsible for implementing the vision of the Atlanta Beltline. So quarterly briefings, obviously happening quarterly, are intended to be a forum for updates on all the most current projects that the Beltline is working on. This also serves as an opportunity to ask questions about these projects specifically. Now, you may have noticed that we've enabled the live transcription, and if you'd like to view this option, please click the live transcription at the bottom of the screen to select your preferences. Additionally, tonight's meeting will be recorded and will be online at our website at beltline.org/meeting. Okay. When you registered to attend tonight's meeting, just want to talk about that for a moment. You probably noticed that we asked a few more questions than normally, specifically around demographic details. So collecting and analyzing demographic data really helps us to better understand our meeting participants, specifically in identify disparity and gaps, make informed decisions, and really promote more equitable, inclusive communities. So that information really serves how we serve the public. So our goal is really just to make sure that we're creating a beltline that benefits all the communities. And the only way we can do that effectively is by collecting data and analyzing that information. So we want to thank you in advance for sharing that information with us and want to ensure you that those individual responses are always kept confidential and that information is aggregated to ensure privacy. So with that, I'd like to take a moment and highlight, let's watch a video and see what have the top 10 projects that we accomplished in 2024. Well, we hope you found that recap of 2024 to be informative. And now I'd like to transition to our CEO of the Atlanta Beltline, Mr. Clyde Higgs. Clyde?
Thank you, Lynette, for that introduction, and thanks for showing that incredibly exciting video. And obviously, you saw that we will have 85% of the Beltline Mainline Trail. We're in the throes of that. We hope to have 16 miles of mainline completed by this time next year. So lots of good activity there. But did want to highlight a couple of things that we were excited about. And one of those is the ribbon cutting for what we describe as the Ralph David House. For those that are longtime Atlantans, you may remember this as the Atlanta Motel. It's a 1960s property that has been converted into affordable housing units for those working in the 30% of area median income and below, also with a touch of supportive housing services there as well. And so this was an exciting day to work with the folks at Striant Construction that really led the charge here. And the Beltline TAD was a major investor in making sure that this project happened. And so a part of the mayor's push for the 20,000 affordable housing units, we need to make sure that we get really deep affordability. And so this is something that we were very proud of in making that investment. And then also, as we think about expanding our team, I wanted to make sure that we introduce you to two new members of the Beltline team. The first being Jalen Eaton, who is our new marketing communications coordinator. Jalen was actually born in Atlanta, but she was raised internationally. So let's give a virtual applause to Jalen. And then also Kyle Guest. And Kyle is our new trail manager for the Beltline. You may note Kyle's name being that he was formerly with Midtown Alliance and has extensive experience in maintenance, asset management, and so excited that he is on board with us. And so also give Kyle kind of a virtual round of applause as well. And as I round up my comments, I know that people are thinking about the federal implications to Beltline. That's something that we are thinking through. We, depending on how you measure it, we have $70 to $100 million at exposure from a federal grants perspective. We think we are mostly okay, but it's something that we're watching daily. So would appreciate your thoughts, your advocacy to make sure that we're getting those grants that we applied and were awarded for, specifically for Southside Trail and Northeast Trail segment 3. So those are just a few comments. I'm still very optimistic. We're thinking up to World Cup and FIFA, lots of activity between now and then. But these are good times and I remain optimistic. So appreciate that, Lynette, and I will hand this back over to the team.
Well, thank you, Clyde, and thank you, Lynette, as well. Hello, all. Good evening. I am Rashida Williamson. I am the Community Engagement Manager for Atlanta Beltline Incorporated, also known as ABI. And at this time, of course, I'm just going to provide an overview of the meeting format for tonight. So we are joined by currently 67 Zoom virtual meeting attendees. And we're also broadcasting live to Facebook. And if you are watching on the Zoom platform right now or Facebook Live, just note that you can follow along on the agenda at the bottom of each slide. And if you are listening by phone, of course, I'm going to walk you through the agenda now. So our agenda tonight has opened up with the welcome and meeting logistics, and we will follow this with an audience polling and Beltline 101. After that, we will listen to ABI updates, followed by a feature presentation from Trees Atlanta. And once we are done with the presentation, of course, we will begin with our Q&A session for any questions, comments, and conversation. We ask that you please do not place any questions in the Q&A box until we get to that portion of the agenda. And questions placed in the Q&A box prior to the completion of the presentation will be dismissed just to ensure that everyone has the opportunity to hear the presentation without distraction. Now, your dismissed questions can be retrieved from the answer section of the Q&A box just by copying it and pasting it back into the live portion of the Q&A box when the presentation is complete. Also, you may have noticed by now that your line is muted, and you'll not be able to share your video screen during the meeting. This again is just to provide the best listening experience for everyone in the audience. Now, a recording of this meeting, the presentation, and all other supporting materials will be made available online at www.beltline.org/meetings. Now, if you're having any technical difficulties during this meeting, please email us at engage@atlbeltline.org. And should we encounter any technical difficulties, we ask for your patience and we appreciate that, of course, as we sort them out. So, of course, before we jump into the project updates, we just want to get a sense of the virtual room just by asking you all a few questions. Now, as I start the poll, you should see the question pop up on your screen. This feature is not made available if you have called in or viewing on a browser online, but of course, I'm going to read those results to the group. So our first question, how we always ask, what neighborhood do you live in? Now we're asking, are you representing Northeast Atlanta, Southeast Atlanta, Southwest, Northwest, a Beltline neighborhood in the city of Atlanta not on this list, or a neighborhood in the city of Atlanta not on this list, or just a neighborhood not in the city of Atlanta? Okay. I see we have 71 Zoom attendees. So let's see if we can get this marked to 50. We want to get all the representation to see who's all in this virtual room. Okay. Thank you for participation. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. We can go ahead and stop the polling and share the results with the group. So we have majority, or at least 12, representing from Northeast, 7 from Southeast, 8 from Southwest, 7 from Northwest. We have 5 that are in a neighborhood in the city of Atlanta that's just not on this list, 14 that's in a neighborhood not in the city of Atlanta. So, question. We always just want to know, how long have you lived in your neighborhood? So this is going to be 1 to 5 years, 6 to 10 years, or 11 or more years. Okay, the question should have popped up on your screen now. All right, all right. Let's go ahead and stop the polling and we can go ahead and share those results with the room. Okay, I see we have 24 people in the room that have been in their neighborhood for 1 to 5 years, 8, 6 to 10 years, and 13, 11 or more years. Next, I want to know, what is your relationship to the Atlanta Beltline? Now, this is going to be a multiple choice question. So I want to know, do you use the trail? Are you a homeowner in a Beltline neighborhood? Do you rent a home in the Beltline neighborhood? A residential landlord, a business owner, a commercial landlord? You could be a developer, a real estate broker. Of course, just generally interested in the Beltline project, but please click as many that represent you. All right, we go ahead and stop the polling if we would like and share the results. 37 saying that they use the trail, 21 being homeowners in Beltline neighborhood, 5 renting a home in a Beltline neighborhood. We do have 4 residential landlords. We do have 2 business owners that are in a Beltline neighborhood, 2 developers, and of course, 33 just generally interested in the Beltline project. So next I want to ask, what are you most likely to be doing on the trail? So again, this is another multiple choice question. I want to know, are you using it for exercising and other recreation that could be cycling? Are you running errands? Are you going to work and school? Are you engaging in leisure activities? That means just sitting out on the patios from the restaurants and the storefronts, or you just don't use the trail at all. All right, let's go ahead and stop the polling and share the results. We have 38 that use it for exercising and other recreation, 17 that run errands, 5 that go to work and school. We appreciate that. Of course, we have 42 engaging in leisure activities and 2 that just don't use the trail. And I'm hoping it's because your portion of the trail has just not been completed yet. But if not, I hope to see you this weekend. So our last question we always love to ask, is tonight your first meeting? And of course, this is going to be single choice, yes or no. Okay, let's go ahead and stop the polling. So we have 40 people who have said no. So we want to welcome you back to our virtual public meetings, but we have 8 that have said yes. So welcome to your first public meeting, and we have many more to come. So between our listeners on the Zoom platform and Facebook Live and the phone, there's always at least that one person, but tonight we have 8 who are participating in their first Beltline meeting. So for that reason, I'm just going to go through a quick Beltline 101. I'm going to start with our vision statement, which is to be the catalyst for making Atlanta a global beacon for equitable, inclusive, and sustainable city life. So part of that means our goals that we want to accomplish, which is first starting off in partnership with MARTA in its efforts to implement the 22 miles of light rail transit, goal of 1,300 acres of new green space, 33 miles of multi-use trails, 5,600 units of affordable workforce housing, $10 billion in economic development, 48,000 in construction jobs, 30,000 in permanent jobs, public art, environmental cleanup, and what we're doing tonight, community engagement. Now, all of these elements make up the Atlanta Beltline Project. So let's go ahead and jump into those Atlanta Beltline Project updates. I'm going to present to you our Senior Project Manager, Megan and Jacob. Tongue twister tonight.
It's okay. Thank you, Rashida. Hey, everybody. I will be hopefully going through a lot of slides very quickly. But if you have any questions, please save them towards the end of the whole presentation. All right. So completing the loop. I'll be giving a basic overview of all the trails, the parks, the streetscape, and what's in design, what's in construction, and when we can expect to be done. And then I'm going to be turning it over to Sean Green, who's going to be updating you all on our transit projects. So we're making really good progress on all of our design and construction projects this year. The big picture is that we have more than half of the 22-mile loop complete, with 5 continuous miles of trail open on the east side. And this will be done by May, and 5 or more will be open on the west side. So that's another 5 continuous miles on the west side. And that's going to be done when West Side 4 opens. And we've completed about 100% of the design for the northern arc, with the final real estate work well underway right now. And we're expecting to be at 70% complete with the full loop by the end of this year. I've been here 12 years, and it is really exciting to be able to say that. For a long time, we weren't there. We were very far behind, but I feel like we're really gaining steam in 2025. All right, so right now we are in the process of executing contracts with design teams for 2 new projects that were included in the strategic implementation plan. The first is West Side Trail Segment 6, which will complete the 22-mile loop by utilizing an inactive rail corridor to complete a Beltline mainline caliper trail connection that will include lights and cameras. And this is going to provide a more direct connection than the current ramp and trail sidewalk situation that we have in place. I know we get a lot of questions on how to connect and go up along White Street and Lawton, and this is hopefully going to help streamline the connections along the West Side Trail. In addition to this, we're working on a key connector trail that will link up the MARTA Oakland City Transit Station, and also several sites where affordable housing will be developed along the Beltline-owned property. And this includes the Avon property as well as the Murphy Crossing sites. Both projects are expected to have a design team under contract and a design in progress within the first quarter of 2025. All right, this next project is Northeast Trail Segment 3. This is a federally funded portion of trail. It includes the mainline trail of the Atlanta Beltline, the 22 loop, as well as several connector trails, the main one being to the MARTA Lindbergh Station, Path 400, and to the Armour Otley Business District. And this project is currently in the right-of-way acquisition phase, with most of the parcels being closed out in 2024. Right now, we've only got 3 parcels remaining to close in February, which is very exciting. We're on schedule right now to procure construction bids in mid-2025, and this should align with the federal funding fiscal year. Currently, this project has more than $42 million in federal funding allocated to the project. It will be our largest and probably our most complex project to date. All right, so Northwest Trail, segment 2. This segment begins at the southwest corner of Bobby Jones Golf Course and travels east. And the design drawings are currently complete. Right now, real estate purchase and easement work is in progress. We're working with the Department of Transportation, or GDOT, to incorporate all of the trail crossings under Peachtree Street as a part of a planned bridge replacement project. And Northwest Trail segment 4, which begins at English Street and Culpeper and ends at the parking lot of Monday Night Brewery along Traybert Avenue. The design drawings are currently complete. We're submitting the drawings to various agencies for permitting pre-approvals right now. And we've actually split it into 2 parts. We have a section A and a section B. We've executed the contract with the construction manager for section A, which is from English Street to Howell Mill. And a notice to proceed with pre-construction work has been issued to the construction manager. All right, Southside Trail construction. So Southside Trail segments 4 and 5 run from Boulevard up to Glenwood. And within the Glenwood Park neighborhood. We're about a year and some change into construction, and work is on pace for completion in 2025. As you can see in this photo, the ramp up to Delmar is currently in the final stages. We should be pouring trail soon between Boulevard and United. Southside Trail segments 2 and 3 is also currently under construction. Right now, we're working on mass grading for the access points at DH Stanton Park, as well as some stormwater piping. The photo to the right is us driving H-piles, which an H-pile is just a very large piece of metal. They're beginning to be installed for a retaining wall here, and the team is working to complete this project within the first half of 2026. West Side Trail. So this is West Side Trail segment 4. This is a key section of our trail. It connects the existing West Side Trail at Lena Street to the completed northern sections of the West Side Trail that go along Marietta Boulevard. It also connects the West Side Beltline connector that gets you to Northside Drive. So it really knits together all of these trails to create a continuous section of about 5 miles. In the top left photo, concrete for the trails being poured, and in the right photo, excavation and haul off is in progress to complete the final grades and brownfield work. So this project's currently on track to be completed by spring of 2025. So on to the Northwest. So Northwest segment 1 begins at the western edge of Peachtree Park Apartments and runs along paralleling Peachtree Creek. The trail is now under construction. There is a haul route that has been complete for the installation of a suspension bridge across Peachtree Creek. This will be the first one on the Beltline. And in the photo to the right, you can see the micro pile, smaller pieces of metal, we'll go with that, work in progress for the bridge foundations. The bridge foundation construction will start in February, so roughly now. And the bridge is currently being fabricated in Greenville, South Carolina, with the first part of the bridge delivery expected in mid-March. Right, so for segment 3, This is Northwest 3. The Beltline is coordinating with adjacent property owners to to accelerate construction between Traver Avenue and Northside Drive. In the photo to the right, the trail will pass between two existing buildings when it's completed. This is the first concrete poured on the Northwest Trail, which is also very exciting. And the rest of this segment design is complete and real estate work is currently underway with it. All right, my Northwest 5. So this is Northwest Trail segment 5. This trail section runs from the intersection of Marietta Boulevard and Huff Road, where West Side segment 3 ended, and it travels north, winding down Ellsworth Industrial and ends at English Street. Right now, clearing and grading from Elaine to Fairmont, which is within the public right-of-way, is ongoing. Elaine has been milled, and progress is currently on hold for an unforeseen utility that we're working with the Department of Watershed Management on. A full street closure is going to be required to install some of the storm water and the speed table at Elaine and Ellsworth. This schedule is going to be provided hopefully around the March-April timeline to you all in the study group and also on our website. And this project is expected to be completed by fall 2025. All right, Ponce Streetscape construction. Ponce Streetscape is complete except for the construction of the new access point ramp from the East Side Trail that leads down to Ponce de Leon and the sidewalk connection there. The access point, which is in this photo, you can see the progress to the right, is expected to be completed by spring of this year. The RDA access point, which is at South Gordon, is pretty much complete except for final guardrails and handrails. It's expected to be finished and open within this month, so February. And the RDA Streetscape project is almost a mile of pedestrian and cycling infrastructure improvements, RDA, and it is open for use now. And we're currently working through, minor punch list items and a few repairs. Beltline Parks. This one is very exciting to me. The contract has been issued and notice to proceed to start early work, such as reviewing of shop drawings and procuring of materials, is underway for Anoda Park. I know I've been saying that for years, but it's actually happening. We actually went out there and marked trees today. Mobilization will likely be in March. We're still working on our very final permits, and construction is expected to take about 18 months to complete. So the West Side Park is our other park. This one is under design. We're currently in the design development phase, and it's expected to include over 2 miles of natural mountain bike trails for various skill levels, as well as kind of a hardscape pump track for teaching usually beginners, but people of all levels, mountain biking and the confidence to go down some of these trails. It's also going to include a hiking trail that will connect the top part of the existing park as well as the bottom part of the park. And right now, design work is underway. We're expected to be complete in the spring, summer period of 2025. So now I will turn the presentation over to Sean Green, who is our principal engineer, to update us on transit.
Thanks, Megan. Hey guys, good evening. Thanks for spending some time with us tonight. Beltline Transit vision of all the different programmatic elements of the Beltline program of programs. Transit is the one that is obviously the biggest infrastructure lift, but it's also going to have the biggest positive effect. It will be the essential democratizer, and it will make sure that everybody has access to the Beltline and all around the Beltline. This rendering here depicts the intended aesthetic. So physical infrastructure, yes, it's heavy infrastructure, but it can also be beautiful. And it's that lush landscaped greenway that we're really banking on. Next slide, please. The effort's funded from the Federal Transit Administration, part of the US DOT. It's got a $2.8 million federal grant in it, and it's matched by $700,000 of Beltline funds for a $3.5 million budget on the study. It's focusing on the Northwest study area. It's focusing in the Northwest, trying to find a transit alignment where there is no abandoned railroad corridor. But we're also looking at the Southwest and the Southeast with respect to station locations. Marta had previously looked at the Northeast quadrant, generally speaking, from Lindbergh down to Glenwood a couple of years ago. And so this study is tying on to the endpoints of that. And that means that the entire Beltline transit study will have looked at the entire Beltline within the last 4 years. When we're done, we expect to have we expect to have some draft recommendations here. Probably be coming out. I'm going to say April. It could slip into May as we work on calendars, but it's going to be along those timeline in late spring where we come back out with some draft recommendations before we finalize them this summer. Next slide, please. So I wanted to give a quick overview of some of our initial findings. Like I said, there is no abandoned railroad corridor in the Northwest. And so generally speaking, between Bankhead at the bottom of your screen and Lindbergh at the top right of your screen, we identified 5 different transit alignments that we think are pretty viable. In red, we generally follow the CSX corridor. In cyan, the light blue color there, we generally follow Norfolk Southern, Peachtree Street, and then CSX. In green, we follow Huff Road, Atlantic Station, Peachtree, and CSX. In purple, we follow Norfolk Southern to Armor Otley. And then in blue, the darker blue there, we follow Huff Road, Atlantic Station, Norfolk Southern, and going through Armor Otley as well. We're in the process of developing high-level cost estimates. We're doing some travel time runs and the service planning to come up with ridership projections. And so we'll be having that next level of detail available when we come back out with our draft recommendations. Next slide, please. So in the Southwest and the Southeast, we looked at 26 different locations, potential station locations, and determined that we're probably going to be best if we have six station locations in the Southwest and about 7 station locations in the Southeast. So we're really in the process of nailing these down and tightening that up a little bit. But it's really mostly a function of a good cadence and a good station spacing. We're trying to balance out, having lots of access with stations too close together, so to speak, because when you have too many stations, your travel time goes up significantly because of all the stops. And since we have the trail immediately adjacent to the transit, there's a pretty solid, walking and biking environment in which to get to a station. So for easy math, if, somebody shows up at an access point on the trail halfway between 2 stations that are a mile apart, it's only a half-mile walk to get to one platform or the other, depending upon which direction you go. And that's generally a 10-minute walk, which we find to be about the limit of what most people are willing to do in terms of walking to get to transit. And then on the last slide, I just wanted to give you guys a really quick overview of about a month-long web-based online survey that we used to gather some detailed feedback from people. Amazingly, we had over 2,200 participants, and not all of the questions were required to be answered, so there's different response rates for each question. But we had, you can see these statistics here on the screen. There's way too much information, obviously, for me to go through tonight. There is a recording of a citywide conversation that we did back in September and that link can get dropped into the chat so you can follow that and see how we got to where we are. But like I said earlier, we're expecting to reach back out and do another round of engagement in the April-May timeframe. And we'll have some draft recommendations, some more feedback opportunity before we come to our final recommendations, which we're really trying to get to in summer. So as always, we're very interested in what you think. The best way to provide your feedback other than through our meetings is through our email address at engage@atlbeltline.org. And I will pass the torch over to our friends in housing policy. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Sean. Good evening, everyone. I'm Dennis Richards, Vice President of Housing Policy and Development for the Beltline. Thank you for joining us today. As our city continues to experience rapid growth, affordable housing production remains a top priority for the Beltline. We have a mandate to create or preserve 5,600 units of affordable housing, specifically within the Beltline Tax Allocation District. We often refer to that as the TAD, the Beltline TAD. So far to date, over 4,100 affordable housing units have been created or preserved within the TAD. In the planning area, those would be neighborhoods that are about a half mile outside of the Beltline. An additional 1,800 units of housing has been created. So to date, since the Beltline's inception, that's over 5,900 units of affordable housing that have been created for our Beltline communities. We also like to note that 1,000 of those units can be directly attributed to the City of Atlanta's inclusionary zoning ordinance, which was legislation championed by our mayor in 2018 when he served as a member of City Council. None of this work would be possible without the many contributions of our mission-aligned developer partners and the partnerships with Invest Atlanta, the City of Atlanta, Georgia Department of Community Affairs, Atlanta Housing, the Development Authority of Fulton County, Atlanta Public Schools, as well as others. Next slide, please. This chart shows ABI's housing production since 2006. Over the past 5 years, and despite the pandemic, we've worked really hard to double the amount of affordable housing within the Beltline TAD. As of today, we're 73% of the way toward that 5,600 unit goal. And with the help from our partners, we ended 2024 with 569 affordable housing units produced, and we continue to have a strong pipeline going into 2025. We'll need to average about 250 affordable housing units annually in order to meet our goal by 2030. However, we do know that with such strong regional growth and a housing shortage, that we must maximize and accelerate our housing production. And we intend to continue to do that in part through strategic real estate acquisitions and with the development of public property throughout the Beltline corridor. And I'll share some more updates on that work here shortly. I did, however, want to take a moment to provide a few housing highlights from 2024. As I mentioned, we did exceed our annual production goal for 2024 by nearly 90%, and that was made possible from $11 million of capital provided from the Beltline TAD, and then including support for 2 housing deals championed by Atlanta Housing for the benefit of our seniors and families, which will provide 320 affordable rental units in the Chosewood neighborhood. That particular site will also have future home ownership opportunities. Capital was also provided for 41 home ownership opportunities in our Oakland City neighborhood. And we also celebrated the opening of several developments, including our Madison Reynoldstown apartments, Stanton Park apartments, and as Clyde mentioned, at the onset, Ralph David House, which is permanent supportive housing for the formerly unhoused. In 2024, we also were able to provide some capital assistance for the acquisition of the Mall West End, which is now set to stage for a catalytic redevelopment project for our historic West End neighborhood. Next slide. As we look ahead, advancing planning and development activities on ABI-owned land remains a primary focus of our work. I did want to take a minute to share some updates across our real estate portfolio. I'll start with 579 Garson Drive, not on the slide here, but it's a 3-acre site in South Buckhead, Lindbergh, next to Passion City Church. We are currently working with our developer partners there to build 130 units of permanently affordable workforce housing, and that'll include 11,000 square feet of affordable commercial space on that site. And that project will serve as a hub of connectivity between the Beltline and the Lindbergh MARTA station. We're pushing to break ground on that project by the end of this year. At our 350 Chapel site, that's a 6-acre site in Grove Park, but it's bordered by the historic Weston Heights neighborhood and Hunter Hills. Over the past couple of years, we've been working with our partners, City of Refuge and TBG Residential, to originate a housing development that will bring about 218 brand new workforce housing units to that neighborhood. We learned this week that our application for 4% housing tax credits was successfully awarded by the Georgia Department of Community Affairs, which has now greenlit that project to advance. So we're very excited about that. As part of that deal, Georgia DCA also awarded the project 54 project-based rental assistance vouchers, which will allow those housing units to serve some of our most vulnerable families. Would like to take a moment just to extend a big thank you to all of our partners involved with that project, as well as our community members for your continued support. We look forward to breaking ground on that project next year. Just across the street, we have our 425 Chapel Road property. That technically lies in historic Weston Heights, bordered by Grove Park and Hunter Hills. We have successfully completed the development and regional impact review process with ARC and Greta for that property, and has now been fully entitled to accomplish our development plan that we published last year. We are currently working through our planning and procurement activities for the first 5 blocks of development on this site, and we intend to develop about 150 for-sale homes and about 5,000 square feet of affordable commercial space that we'll make available to our local small businesses. So for our developers that may be on the line, be on the lookout, as well as our contractors, because we'll be putting out some procurement opportunities, seeking partnerships there. Moving on to our 356 University Avenue site, that is a 14-acre site in the Pittsburgh neighborhood. We're continuing to work through a comprehensive planning process in collaboration with the community on that site. We currently envision that site to be about 4 phases of mixed-use development, which will include market rate, affordable housing, and various commercial and light industrial uses. We are currently working to entitle that site, and we'll be seeking a developer partner shortly after that. Lastly, our Murphy Crossing site, that is a 20-acre property in Oakland City. ABI has decided to move on from the development team selected to lead that project. Unfortunately, there were material delays and project changes that prevented us from reaching deal terms, which ultimately led us to make that difficult decision. We'll be holding a stakeholder advisory meeting next Wednesday, that's February 19th at 6:30 p.m. To discuss more about that project, followed by a study group meeting open to the general public on Tuesday, March 11th at 6:30 p.m. I do want to affirm that ABI remains fully committed to Murphy Crossing and advancing the development of that as expeditiously as possible. ABI will be leading the planning and entitlement process for the site going forward. We intend to fully plan and entitle the site this year. ABI will also continue to make investments into the property by performing certain planning and land disturbance responsibilities that will accelerate vertical construction on the site. ABI, as Megan mentioned, is also ramping up pre-development activities on the Oakland-Murphy Connector Trail, which is that vital connection from Oakland City MARTA up to Aline Avenue, which will also be vital to catalyze future development across the Murphy Triangle. We look forward to sharing more about this work in the coming weeks. That concludes my remarks. Thank you all for your time and attendance. I would like to pass it on to Kelvin Collins, our VP of Economic Development. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dennis, and good evening, everyone. My name is Kelvin Collins, and I serve as the Vice President of Economic Development. It's a pleasure to be with you this evening and to provide economic development updates. Since this is our first quarterly briefing, I'd like to begin with a quick refresher of our 5 core areas of focus that forms our economic development framework. Now, this transformative, community-driven approach helps guide our service delivery efforts to leverage the infrastructure project to create greater economic outcomes for both residents and small businesses, especially those that are historically marginalized. So as you turn your attention to the graphics on the screen, we believe that by prioritizing these 5 interconnected areas that include small business support, commercial affordability, digital access and innovation, commercial district support, and workforce development, we aim to create a thriving Beltline community as a whole, where prosperity is shared and opportunities are within reach. So essentially, we're blending both focused economic growth and tangible community benefits. So here are a few updates on what we've been up to and a few look ahead items. Our Business Solution Office stands as a beacon of empowerment for small businesses since it launched a couple of years ago. Operating as a one-stop shop for small businesses, the Business Solutions Office is delivering tailored training programs, expert guidance, access to funding, and networking opportunities. And as we continue to refine our service offering, this office will continue to become a dynamic hub that will fuel entrepreneurial dreams and drive sustainable small business growth along the Beltline. So if you haven't joined us yet for one of our quarterly business breakfasts, you're missing out. And so, but you do have a chance because we do have an upcoming breakfast this month. It's February 27th at 8 a.m. in the morning. And we would love if you can join us for that. It's going to be over at Plywood Place on the west side of the Beltline at Lee and White Development. And so the focus for that breakfast is going to be World Cup 2026 games and how small businesses can be prepared and get themselves ready to take advantage of the opportunity that the World Cup brings. I think currently we are over 100 RSVPs. So if you haven't done so and you're interested in joining us, come grab some breakfast, connect with other small businesses, and get a chance to meet some of our economic development staff that are working on your behalf every single day. So if you haven't done so yet, we'll put a link in the chat for you to register, and we would love for you to join us on February 27th. In addition to the networking opportunity that the Business Breakfast provides, our signature offering within the Business Solutions Center is Beltline Business Ventures. That's designed as a small business accelerator with goals to create easy access to expansion resources for small businesses to help them stabilize, build resiliency, and to scale their operations around the Beltline. Now, this 10-week training program will cover items like market feasibility, operational excellence, developing your staffing, going about signing a lease in a thoughtful way, getting the legal assistance necessary. And last year, we graduated upwards of 25 businesses, and a handful of those businesses are working towards establishing locations around the Beltline. Now, if you're a small business or you know of a small business, please let them know that the application for the next round is going to open up in the second quarter of this year. So please visit our website and apply and be part of this exciting journey for small businesses along the Beltline. Next, I want to share a little bit about our commercial affordability portfolio. The goal here is really for us to ensure that small local businesses can thrive in physical spaces along the Beltline and coexist with new development, right? So it's really about having the small businesses benefit from the economic growth and really be thoughtful about how do we mitigate future commercial displacement adjacent to the Beltline. Last year, we hired a consultant firm, HRNA, together with Kindred Futures to draft a commercial affordability strategy. And we're excited to announce that this year, we're going to begin the implementation process with a generous support of $275,000 from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. We're going to kick that off with a launch of our Commercial Affordability Consortium, which is going to activate sort of the collective engagement, which is part of how the Beltline operates. And that bit of implementation work would be led by Kindred Futures. And some of you may know that organization as the Atlanta Well Building Initiative. They've just rebranded, so they would lead that work for us. If you do have thoughts, though, and ideas about commercial affordability, I encourage you to share it with us at business@atlbeltline.org, and stay tuned for more details on commercial affordability work as we proceed. And also, you know that some of you may know that one of our earliest effort on affordability is the Beltline Marketplace, which is using repurposed shipping container to create turnkey retail spaces that launched a couple of years ago. Well, we're excited to announce that we started with 2 locations, 6 businesses, and this next round is going to be a total of 14 businesses and 4 locations. So it's been eagerly awaited, the launch of Cycle 2. So stand by, and in the next quarter, you'll have an opportunity to support some of these local businesses directly on the trail. Next update I'd like to share is the work that we're doing within our commercial districts, which is really about strengthening the wider Beltline ecosystem, whether or not it's in the West End or Sweet Auburn or Little Five Points. We see these commercial nodes as the lifeblood of the neighborhoods, whether or not they're offering connections, commerce, or just keeping the Atlanta culture together. And so at the Beltline, we're committed to strengthening the partnership of these local merchants associations and commercial districts. We see them as champions. And so last year, we invested over $500,000 in 11 of those organizations. And so many of them are now better positioned to conduct strategic planning, do some needs assessment, market their district, and really attract and retain some of the small businesses within the commercial corridor. We're also going to be launching the next round of our facade improvement grant program. Another 6 businesses are going to be a beneficiary of those grants. That's going to give an opportunity to improve the exterior of the building. And so we're working with Purpose Possible to expand that program in the coming years as well. Next, I want to talk quickly about workforce development, which is such a key part of what is going to create affordability around the Beltline. It's about connection to jobs and being a bridge to opportunities. And at ABI, we're focused on advancing a sector-based workforce development strategy. One of those key sectors is the green job sector. In 2024, I think about June of last year, we launched Urban Forestry Career Pathways, which is an opportunity in partnership with Trees Atlanta, Green and Youth Foundation, and On the Rise to create a job training program and placement effort for Beltline residents that are interested in green sector jobs, whether or not it's tree care or pruning or landscaping. We've been able to graduate about 28 residents around the Beltline, and thus far, 8 of them are gainfully employed in the green sector. So we're continuing to try to find employment opportunity for the rest of the graduates, but there's just tremendous opportunity there. In 2025, we're going to be launching a sector-based effort within the healthcare sector with support from Kaiser Permanente. Some more information to come on that as we move forward. And finally, digital access and innovation. ABI, as some of you may know, has a fiber-rich network of 16 miles of dark fiber underneath the trail. And this gives us an opportunity to build out a smart corridor vision that allows for a greater user experience, that allows us to use technology to advance public safety initiatives, and also to help close the digital divide. So in the next coming months, you'll see 2 pilot sites pop up on the Beltline, and we're going to be testing some technology solutions, offering public Wi-Fi. You're going to see a couple of digital kiosks and smart trash cans, all towards future-proofing the Beltline and making sure that we're future-ready as we continue to build out the trail. So to wrap, I would like to give a public shout-out to the economic development team. They're working tirelessly on your behalf to deliver these innovative solutions and maximizing the economic benefits of the Beltline. And with that, I would like to welcome Lynette Reed, our Vice President of Planning, Engagement, and Art.
Thank you, Kelvin. And thank you for that robust update. Again, Lynette Reed, I get the pleasure of overseeing the Planning, Engagement, and Art team. And so just a couple of updates. I just want to let you know we just have a few more slides, and then once our feature presentation completes, we'll jump into Q&A. But as relates to the master plan, as many of you know, we have been going through the process, or may not know that we've been going through the process of updating the sub-area plans. The original sub-area plans were developed in 2006, between 2006 and 2012, before a Beltline was actually complete. So you may be saying, well, what is a sub-area master plan? We call it a sub-area master plan, but it functions very much like your typical neighborhood plan, where it makes policy recommendations specifically around land use, mobility, green space. It makes affordable housing recommendations, all for livable, transit-oriented development. And the goal is for this to serve as a guide as communities grow and develop. And so the lighter blue sub-area that you see have been already adopted. And so we just adopted through a series of community engagement extensive over almost a year and a half. We completed the Sub Area 6 Master Plan, which was actually adopted in December of last year. So adopted last year, and we are about to kick off the Sub Area 8 update led by Forrest Rose, our senior planner, and Rashida Williamson, our community engagement manager. And so the next public meeting for that kickoff will be on Monday, February 24th from 6:30 to 8. Check back on the website to get more information about that. But so you may be wondering where the boundaries for Sub Area 8 are. And so the boundaries are I-75 to the north, Home Park and Georgia Tech to the east, Marietta Street to the north, and Marietta Street and Marietta Boulevard to the north, and Marietta Boulevard, I'm sorry, to the west. And these are the neighborhoods and the NPUs that make up Sub Area 8. We hope you will join us for that. And the next slide. Just to highlight what's happening in arts and culture, and this happened since we met last in December. Our artist in residency, our curator in residence, Eugene Bird III, completed his journey. His work with the Beltline is really set to create art that reflects the most important source of his inspiration in his life, and that's his daughter and being a father. And his work was called A Work in Progress, an honest look at fatherhood, addressing issues rooted in centuries of slavery, systemic racism, and mass incarceration, unemployment, while also giving a personal look into his own journey as a father and what that's been like. And so he completed his mural work with us, and that can be seen along White Street on Southeast and Southwest Atlanta, and at 1200 White Street specifically. So please take a moment to come to the site and enjoy his portrayal of fatherhood and the journey that it is. And right now, I get the pleasure of transitioning us to our feature presentation. We have Brian with us this evening. Brian Williams is the Director of Conservation for Trees Atlanta. And Trees Atlanta is our partner responsible for implementing the Arboretum along the Beltline. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Brian.
All right. Thank you, Lynette. Like Lynette said, I'm the Director of Conservation at Trees Atlanta. I'm here this evening to tell you a little bit about the Atlanta Beltline Arboretum, which is part of the Beltline that everybody sees whenever you're out there, but maybe you didn't know it existed. To tell a little bit about Trees Atlanta first, we're a nonprofit community group that protects and improves Atlanta's urban forest by planting, conserving, and educating. We've been around since 1985 and have been involved in helping to realize the Beltline as a project since 2007. The great thing about our partnership with the Beltline is that we're able to implement all of our mission-centric objectives, planting, conserving, and educating on the Atlanta Beltline Arboretum. You might be asking, I've used the word a couple times, what is an arboretum? It's defined as a botanical garden with collections of trees and shrubs specifically. It's kind of like a living museum. It's made of trees and it can be used for research, education, and display. The specific purpose of the Beltline Arboretum, our goals are to demonstrate sustainable planting practices, largely using native plants on existing soils, to educate on the importance of Atlanta's urban tree canopy, to function as an ecological layer of the Beltline that can provide shade, stormwater management, habitat, to display plant collections and ecologically themed art. And on top of that, it's a free public garden that anybody can go and see. Next slide, please. 2025 is an exciting year for us. We get to reaccredit the Arboretum. We hold currently a level 2 accreditation. That's through the Morton Register of Arboreta. We're reaccrediting our third time this year. The level 2 criteria we had to meet, we have at least 100 accessioned types of woody plants, enhanced education and public programming, a written collections policy, and our management has to be paid at that level instead of volunteer. For those of you who may not know, accessioning is the record-keeping component of an arboretum. Each of the trees out there has a unique accession number that we assign to it. That number corresponds with a database and map entry, and there's a tag on or near that tree that also corresponds with it. Our eventual goal is to raise the accreditation to level 3 in 2030 when we reaccredit again. That'll require us to meet the threshold of 500 accession types of woody plants, which we're basically already there, but we'll have to have a dedicated curator of collections among other criteria. Next slide, please. In 2025, we plan to update some of our existing plant collections. The Reynoldstown Stumpery Garden is going to get replacement of some of the log walls there. We're going to use some sculptural log elements to help counterbalance the natural decay of the logs and stabilize them a little bit more. We have all of the 33 oaks native to Georgia planted on the East Side Trail. And at this native oak planting site, we're going to be performing some repair and relocation of David Landis's metal sculptures just for better visibility as those trees continue to grow. At the pitcher plant garden on the West Side Trail, it's time for us to replace the original drip irrigation system. Its lifespan has ended. And then at the transition from the East Side Trail to the Northeast Trail at Monroe Drive, we're going to be replanting after construction there with the addition of trees and perennials. Next slide, please. All right. Well, it didn't quite move forward there. All right, new projects for the 24-25 planting season that we're currently working on. We have the tiny forest that's located on the South Side Trail, segment 1. And that concept emphasizes a greater species diversity and a higher planting density to boost the speed and the success of reforestation in a small area. This is inspired by the Miyawaki method mini forests that are being planted around the world the last couple of years. We have a disjunct garden planned near Pittsburgh Yards. The disjunct garden's going to demonstrate similarities and differences between related but geographically separate plant groups, and that's what the definition of a disjunct is. And we share these plant groups in the eastern US with Eastern Asia. So, for example, you might see a native magnolia here from the southeast growing next to a Japanese magnolia, alongside many other of our shared groups of flowering plants, things like dogwoods, redbuds, snowbells, and witch hazels, which naturally grow in both of these regions. We're also doing complete landscape installation on Northeast Trail Segment 1, adjacent to Piedmont Park, and on West Side Trail Segment 4 that Megan mentioned earlier. Next slide, please. Oop, that's our disjunct garden plan. There's Northeast 1, and there's the team hard at work on West Side 4 planting a tree. All right, this is my last slide here, just to give you a look at what our typical timeline for landscape installation is. You know, we're out there often after the trail has opened. So, you know, people might be wondering what we're doing, how long are we going to be in the way, etc. Typically, November to April, we're doing our tree and shrub planting while they're dormant. From March to May, we transition into site prep for ground cover. We clear any existing temporary vegetation that the general contractor put out. We'll add compost to the soil. Then from May to June, when the plants are delivered from nurseries, we'll do our ground cover plantings, flowers, grasses, ferns. July to September, the trail shoulders get their seed on them. We'll install the rope fences behind the shoulders. And then October, everybody gets to take a breather and get ready to do it again for the next year. At this point, I hope you enjoyed this very brief look at the Atlanta Beltline Arboretum, and I'll pass it back to Rashida.
Thank you, Brian. We truly appreciate that in the presentation. And of course, thank you all to all of my presenters tonight. So again, we've reached that portion in the agenda where it's open to comments, questions, and conversations because we want to hear from you. So let's just discuss how we can participate in this conversation. Questions and comments can be typed or verbally expressed by raising your hand. Our audience is made up of Zoom online attendees, phone attendees, as well as Facebook Live attendees. So again, I'll briefly go over how you all can participate. For our phone attendees, if you would like to speak, please press star 9 on the telephone keypad to raise your hand when the discussion begins. A member of my team will open up your line when it is your turn, and your phone will prompt you to press star 6 to unmute yourself. For my online attendees, meaning my Zoom attendees, you can start submitting your responses at any time in the Q&A box. In addition, you can upvote a response by clicking the thumbs up icon. The raise your hand feature is available for you all as Zoom participants. However, I'm going to prioritize those phone attendees. And lastly, for my Facebook Live attendees, please feel free to participate in the comments section. Someone on our staff will make sure that I see your questions. So let's go ahead and open it up. And again, if your question was dismissed, please go ahead, just copy and paste it back in. This first question is from Brian, and this is going to refer to the Legacy Resident Retention Program, Dennis, just so you're aware that I'm coming up to you. Hello, we are in the sunset of 2030 with the Legacy Resident Retention Program. We are in the sunset of the 2030, which the Legacy Resident Retention Program will expire. We know everybody is not eligible for this program. However, we lost several years because of COVID and inflation. What can be done to extend the LRRP past 2030 to 2050? Because legacy residents are scared that we will get displaced once we get to 2030. 2030 is basically here. What is the plan to help us retain us to be able to afford and maintain to live in the city? Are we being proactive? Thank you.
That's a great question, and I know we have representation from Atlanta Beltline Partnership, our very important partner that leads that program. You know, what I'll say is it's a philanthropically funded program. There's certainly a commitment on ABP's part to look at ways to expand that program. At the end of the day, it is a Band-Aid on the issue. It's a more of a policy issue that needs to be handled to help manage tax increases for legacy residents. And there has been legislation at the state level passed to address that. I'll invite, I see Michael Davis in the line. I'll invite Michael if he had anything else to add.
Thanks, Dennis. And Dennis, it's a great point. It is a philanthropically oriented program, and we are actively working. We just received grant funding to work on policy. At the partnership, we have an advocacy role, and our plan really is to work to develop policy that is progressive and fair for working folks, fair for seniors, and look to get that passed. So we look at it this way. Over the next few years, you've seen the interest in what was passed recently at the state level. Many of the municipalities across the state are choosing to opt out of that legislation because it's a 5-year commitment, capping increases at the rate of inflation, which is around 3%. But we are tirelessly going to be working over the next few years to come up with policy-based solutions that will effectively protect and extend beyond the current outlook on the program, which is through the 2030 tax year.
Thank you, Michael and Dennis. We appreciate that. Tracy had a follow-up question, and I want to answer this question right now just in case. She wants to know, does the retention plan cover the Hunter Hills neighborhood? If not, why?
I will take that. I do not have the subdivision list in front of me. We do have 24 neighborhoods in the sub areas 9, 10, 1, and 2 from from Bankhead down to Chosewood Park. I'd have to look at the address. The great thing we have now is we have a check address tool. But going back to how we define the coverage area, so in these neighborhood stabilization areas, we did a study back in 2018, and in looking at with the growth of the Beltline, where property values might increase and where there was the greatest risk of displacement and gentrification. Also, we looked at a lot of other economic factors, and those particular 4 neighborhood stabilization areas looked like they had the most risk. So we identify those areas and define areas that are in the planning areas, a half mile on either side of the Beltline. And those are the restricted areas that we have for that. I don't know if one of my colleagues can go to the site and if we had the address, we can look it up. But I do not have access right now to actually do a real live lookup for that. But what I will do is look this up offline and get back on this question.
Thank you, Michael. Just let me know when you're ready. All right, this next question is for Morgan, and this will be for Sean. Is there any update on whether transit is moving forward?
Excuse me, sorry. Transit is moving forward. The Streetcar East Extension project over at MARTA has a little bit more work to do on the planning side, just really for the purposes of trying to identify operations and maintenance costs on the front side of this before we can really start tearing into the next level of design. So right now, the plan, the planning work that has been done has delivered 30% plans. And the next stage would be to deliver 60% plans based upon the results of this planning work that is being finalized probably over the course of the next couple months. And then
Thank
there's
you,
the
Sean.
transit study that I talked about earlier as well.
Oh, and stay right there. This is from an MPU Zoom room. Ooh, we have neighborhood planning units here. We understand from the mayor that there is some analysis being done on Streetcar East Extension. What's the status? What is the next milestone? And when can neighbors learn if it is a go or a no-go?
So most of what I just said answers that, I think. MARTA is still pushing that project forward with their consultant team. In terms of it being a no-go or a go or whatever, from my understanding, it's an active project and we're actively working towards, delivering it. So hopefully that answers the question.
Okay. Now the next question. This is from Alon. For the transit piece, there are a lot of concerns having to do with the trees along the Beltline. Can you please speak on how trees and tree replacements are being taken into consideration? And are you already working with Arboretum Trees Atlanta? So Brian, you could tackle this question as well.
Yeah, Brian, if you care to add 2 cents, feel free. But what I'd say is the 30% plans that were developed very conservatively because it's a planning level of design. And then, to get to 60% plans, you develop a lot more detail and a lot tighter. And then to get to 90%, you get even more detail and a lot tighter to ultimately get to those 100% plans. And so the 30% plans start to really help you identify what impacts are and what kind of footprints you're expecting. And in a lot of the east side Beltline corridor, where there are trees, part of it, the arboretum on the transit side, there is going to be some level of conflict there. And so trees at some level are going to be removed and replaced per the City of Atlanta tree ordinance. But one of the things that we have been looking at to minimize, or at least to reduce the number of tree impacts that we will have, is we've looked at whether or not we can do off-wire streetcar light rail transit for the East Extension. And if we're able to do that, and the documentation that we've been given from MARTA, from the consultant team, and all that research leads us to believe that we can probably save a lot more trees because we won't have to have the overhead wires, and therefore we won't have to have the tree canopy pulled back quite so far. So we feel like that's one more design step that we can take to try to tighten that up and reduce the impacts to the trees that are already out there. Some of the trees that are out there that are in the way were specifically planted in the transit guideway to create a better experience until the transit system came in. So we know that going in, there was going to be some level of tree removal. Others were planted in locations where assumptions at the time turned out to be inaccurate. So we're dealing with that over the course of the next year or so to really tighten up that design and really try to figure out how we can save as many trees as we can.
And our 2 cents from Trees Atlanta, thank you, Sean, is, similar. I think everybody hopes that transit's built with as little removal of trees as is possible, but the reality is it's a construction project and it's Atlanta and there's a lot of trees and we all know how that goes. We're aware that transit's always been a part of the project, and what we hope to see on the Arboretum side is that Beltline Transit includes, space for tree planting and that it's the greenest version of transit that we can possibly make it.
Thank you, Sean and Brian. I appreciate that. This next question is from Westview, Atlanta. This will be for Cynthia. Regarding the RDA streetscape in Westview, first, we are very happy with the work you all have done in our Westview business corridor, but we have seen many drivers crash into the new planters to the point where most of the plants are gone and the curbs around the planters are destroyed. What can be done to make the planters more visible to help reduce the number of accidents? Can we have a reflective paint added to the curbs or something vertical to make things more visible to drive?
Thank you. Number one, thank you for the compliment. We do appreciate that. And we understand that this did bring value to the neighborhood and that you guys are taking benefit with it. We are aware of the curbs being destroyed in that area. For us to do any modification to that area, it is a Georgia DOT stretch. We did have to go to them to get approval for that. And one of the solutions they did allow us to do is to actually paint those curbs. So we will be painting those curbs white to make them more visible to the drivers in that areas. And we're also looking at some other things that we're going to run by Georgia DOT as well before we publish that to the general public to see if we can enhance visibility in that area as well. So we appreciate that.
Thank you, Cynthia. Sean, I'm gonna call you right back. This is a question from Tim. Amongst the transit funding sources, is taxing the commercial and apartment properties in the overlay district a source that is being considered?
Right now, the funding program available for transit is the More MARTA half-penny sales tax. That is where the program currently exists. There is not talk yet of other opportunities and other potential revenue streams to make the pie even bigger. But when we finish up with the Beltline Transit study in the summer, that'll help us to understand what the total dollar number is going to be. And then we can really start thinking about that. So to a certain extent, that's over my pay grade, but at the same time, it is something that we will need to be looking into to see how to make that pie even bigger.
Thank you, Sean. This next question, I'm lobbing it off to our CEO, Clyde, but of course, with the introduction of our Vice President, Lynette, this is from Rosa. Has the new governmental administration affected the development of the Beltline yet?
So I'll start and then more than welcome to let Clyde add to it. Clyde alluded to it I'm sorry, my video's not on. Clyde alluded to it at the top of the meeting, but the Beltline is primarily funded through local and private sources, with some state and federal grants also contributing to our funding. So we are actively assessing daily the impact of this current federal situation and the potential impact. And Clyde, I see you came off. Do you want to add anything to that as well?
Yeah. Well, Lynette is right, and again, it's something that we're thinking about. And full transparency, it's taking some real estate in my mind. And as I mentioned earlier, depends on how you measure this, but anywhere from 70 to close to $100 million of federal grants are kind of at risk right now. And if you have been following, and I'm sure you have, all the federal news and anything that has obviously the words, equity, inclusion, diversity. And if you think about one of our major grants, which is the RAISE grant that came out of U.S. Department of Transportation, raise, the E in raise stands for equity. It's basically rebuilding America through infrastructure and sustainability and equity. And so those are things that we're concerned about. But most of our funds, as Lynette mentioned, come from local sources, the TAD, philanthropic funds. And so, it has the potential to cost us some real pain. And it's mostly the delays too, because ultimately, these were funds that were appropriated in previous years. So that's law. But you can clearly see how the delay in getting those funds down here to the local level can slow us down. So I don't want to sugarcoat it, but we do think we had a plan B, or at least a plan A minus. We thought about this even last year, about this potential scenario, and so fortunately, this is something that we've been planning for somewhat, but it's still going to cost us a little pain.
Thank you, Clyde, and thank you, Lynette, for answering that question. This next question is from Brian. Since we know we are in a housing crisis, why can't we increase housing quotas and transit, because transit and housing work together? To achieve both goals, the transit and the housing, why are we not utilizing all funding programs available to us? Other cities accomplish their projects as well. So this is a twofold question. If Sean or if Dennis would like to jump in and tackle this one.
Well, I can speak to the transit side of the question. The tax allocation district funds that we have coming into ABI are able to be used across all of our programmatic elements only within the tax allocation district boundaries. Other funding streams that we have are not able to be used for items such as transit or housing because they were specifically identified and created for the purposes of trail construction, for example, the Special Services District. And then when philanthropy provides funding, it's usually for a specific purpose. I would not expect that to be philanthropy coming to transit, but we do already have philanthropy that comes into housing. And I'll leave that for Dennis to talk more about if he wants to. But that's kind of the lay of the land with respect to our local funding streams. With respect to our federal transit partners and partnerships, we're not yet to the point where we would be applying for federal transit grants. Like I said earlier in my presentation, Beltline Transit Study is looking and trying to come up with a locally preferred alternative for 3/4 of the Beltline, and that's going to be a very large dollar number when all is said and done. And we can come up with what the phasing plan is and all of that, but there is more work needed before we would be eligible to apply for Federal Transit Administration grant funds.
I think from a housing perspective, I would add that, we do consider our housing and mixed-use development projects to be transit-oriented development on the Beltline. And our mayor set a bodacious goal of producing 20,000 affordable housing units in the city. And so certainly the work we're doing at the Beltline is contributive to that. And hence my earlier comments that we're doing everything we can to maximize output. We fully expect to exceed our mandated goals. That said, from a capital standpoint, Sean was spot on. Some of our capital only spends geographically in certain areas and in certain ways. However, across agencies in the city, we do have a host of public incentives that can be offered from agencies such as Invest Atlanta, Atlanta Housing, the AUDC, and ABI, and these can be layered and stacked and structured in ways to bring about transit-oriented development. And so that occurs across all of our deals. And it should also be mentioned that public-owned property in this city, the mayor's office has done a great job to assess all existing public property and determine what can be redeveloped for a higher and better use. And so that work is ongoing and will continue.
Thank you, Dennis and Sean, for that. I'm now going to allow Michael just to come back to address that question about the Legacy Resident Retention Program and its effects.
Thank you. Real quick, I wanted to get some other context. First off, Hunter Hills is one of our neighborhoods. And the other good thing I wanted to look in our database, there are actually 12 Hunter Hill residents that are part of our program. And so basically, the program we have at the Atlanta Beltline for Legacy Resident Retention Program is the largest program like this in the city. And we actually have over 250 participants. So 12 of them are in Hunter Hills. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Michael. And just to also address it, we do have the address finder and locator that was dropped in the chat earlier. So if you want to use that website as a resource, you can do so. And then I'm just going to speed through these last two questions. These will be the last two questions we'll take for the evening. This first question is from Alon. He wanted to ask to our new Beltline reps, what brought you to the Beltline and why did you decide this was a job for you? At this moment in time, I do apologize. They're not going to be able to answer this question, but you can feel free to email them. Our contact information is on the website. The reason being is because we have our project managers specifically here in this webinar format just to address the questions about ABI project updates. We do apologize for that. And this last final question, this will be for you, Sean, if you do have the answers. This is again from the MPU Zoom Room 8. Can you give us the next 3 big milestones for Beltline East Streetcar? You said that the 30% plans will be done in 2 months. What are the next 2 milestones after that and the dates? And this is Tom Boyle, the president of Old Fourth Ward. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. So the 30% plans are actually coming up on a year old at this point. And so whether I misspoke or it was conflated, the 30% plans already exist. And so what we're expecting within the next couple months is the final documentation with respect to the analyses that Marta's consultant is doing about Beltline's basically design standard for the grass track in the way that we want to see it. There'd been a lot of work done, but a little bit more work was needed to interview other transit properties around the country, around the world, to figure out how they inspect, operate, and maintain that type of a grass track, greenway, guideway. So I would expect over the course of the next couple months that those would be wrapped up, and that's going to be kind of a vehicle technology, whether the light rail streetcar has the capacity to be able to do off-wire operations. We've got the preliminary draft of that, so they'll be finalizing it. They'll have more information with respect to the grass track analyses that they've done. They're also looking at fixes that can be made to the existing streetcar operation and physical infrastructure to improve that operation. And I'll give you a fourth for free. The community outreach plan that they've developed is being finalized as well. So hopefully over the course of the next couple of months, whether it's 2 months or 3 months, we'll see how that goes. But I would expect that those would be the 4 next things coming.
Thank you,
Tom.
Sean.
Thanks, Rashida.
All right. So before we close out the meeting, of course, I have my few additional polling questions. So as we start the poll, you should see the question pop up on your screen. Again, this feature is not available if you have called in or viewing in a browser online, but I will read the results to the group. The first question, was the information presented tonight helpful in changing your perception and or understanding of the Beltline project? This is single choice. And it's a yes, no, or no opinion. All right, let's go ahead and close the polling and share those results with the room. All right, 29 said yes. Let's go to the last polling question. Did you learn something new? Good results, good results. Let's go ahead and end the polling and share the results. I have 27 people in the room that has said yes and one that has said no. I'm hoping the person who said no has been attending all of our meetings and just get the updates as they come along. But for the evening right now, I just want to thank you all for your participation, of course, in this final round of polling questions. I want to thank our ABI team for all those wonderful updates. And of course, I would love to thank Trees Atlanta as well. Most of all, I also just want to thank you all as the audience for joining us in this virtual world. So as a reminder, a recording of this meeting and the presentation will be made available online at beltline.org/meetings. And of course, we'll see you all on the Beltline. Have a great night.